Coming up, the NBA landscape changes in a hurry. The Brooklyn Nets get back control of their future and bidding a fond farewell, but not too far, as Mikal Bridges will join the New York Knicks for a massive pick haul. We break it all down coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. Thank you for being here live on YouTube. As we always say, Doug, as soon as you assume it's safe to go to bed, safe to turn out the lights, the Brooklyn Nets always make news. This about as shocking, I think either one of us would say it could be, from a Brooklyn Nets trade, picks, New York Knicks, all happening here, starting with Mikal Bridges, obviously.
This is crazy, man. This is crazy. This is in one fell swoop. Marks, they reset the entire organization. We'll see how it goes. We'll have days and days to go into like what this means for the organization, what this means long term, what this means for Brooklyn on like a player level, what it means on a pick level, and how in just, in the span of basically 15 minutes, the Nets reset their entire organization to go into full draft, full tank, reset the deck, end of the superstar era, cutting ties with basically everything that was associated with that, moving on from a guy that they said was going to be the guy that they went into the future with, Mikal Bridges. And we're going to go through, all the stuff that happened here, but just on a high level, it's not often, and we're close to these situations because we talk about these guys every day. It's not often, honestly, that gets something like to shoot me out of bed. Oh my God, I can't believe this just happened, because that is how shocking this is. And Adam's not in his usual location here. I'm just going to give us a little ground. If you look at his background, we're expecting the podcast tonight. We're expecting to go tomorrow. So not exactly on the same connection. So if I go a little more long-winded, that's part of the reason. But let me just run down what we're talking about here, and then we will rewind back through some of the other stuff. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's news still coming in. Woj is dropping Woj bomb after Woj bomb. So if something else comes up as we talk, obviously we're talking about this live. Got a ton of people here. Let me roll through what just happened here and make sure we're all caught up. First bit of news, Mikal Bridges is sent across town to the New York Knicks. That alone is a historic trade. The Nets trading with the Knicks and sending a player like of consequence, much less anybody of consequence in Mikal Bridges, sending him across town. That alone is major news. The Knicks send back 4 unprotected picks. This is 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031, a 2025 protected Milwaukee first, a 2028 unprotected pick swap, and a 2025 second rounder for Bridges. And the Nets are going to send over a 2026 second round pick. Going to get to the other part of this deal in a second. Adam, I don't think I've ever said your name on the podcast. I think when my wife says my name, and I'm like, "Hey, who are you talking to? We've been together forever. Like, you can just talk to me. I know you're talking to me." What was your reaction when you heard this?
Shocked. I mean, absolutely shocked from every single really level of it. From a Brooklyn Nets perspective, they seemed like they were going to hold on to Mikal Bridges like the 2025 offseason, in spite of what we've talked about. So there's some irony here that you and I have been pushing for the Brooklyn Nets to make a massive decision like this, yet we thought they'd be going towards 2025 offseason, bringing in the future stars, having that core. That's step number one. The part about with the New York Knicks is absolutely mind-blowing, because you do not make these type of trades when it's in division, when it's city, when you're competing for the headlines of that city. But it probably leads to, when we go about what you get back in a haul like this, I don't think we felt there was the ability maybe still to get this level of pick package back for a player like Mikal Bridges, at least at this point. This is the New York Knicks saying, we want to compete now. We believe that he's the missing piece. We know all the connections roster over there, obviously, and they were willing to say, open up the vault, whatever you want. And that probably is the needle move for Sean Marks to make a decision like this. You heard the term Godfather offer. Would that be what it took? This probably equates to that, to make the Brooklyn Nets answer this call and make this trade.
And the second part of this is what makes it all sort of snap completely into focus, because the first part of this, which is, Sean Marks had to have been incredible. I mean, this is such an understatement. Had to have been incredibly busy because within moments of this Bridges deal going down, the second deal is announced, and that is the Nets are trading the 2025 Suns pick swap and the 2027 first round. Basically, I'm just going to sum this up. They're basically trading all the Suns picks back 1-to-1 to Houston for the Nets picks and swaps back, right? So they're going to get back into the 2025 draft, which has been talked about as being, the Cooper Flag draft and a lot of other talent. They're getting that back, that 26 pick that had gone out in the Harden trade. And it's a 25 swap. So they're going to be good to go on being able to tank and not have to worry about swapping with the Rockets. And then the 2026 pick, which was just a straight up pick. Essentially, on a high level, this is what the Nets did. They traded Bridges for 5 picks, for 5 first rounders from the Knicks, basically. And then they get back into a position where there can be in charge of their own, in charge of their own tank, be their own tank commanders, in a way that we have been sort of advocating if they were going to make this move, if they were going to make the Bridges move and decide to make sure that they were fully pivoting into this reset. Part of that reset had to be that they got their pick control back, because there makes no sense to tank if you're just going to hand the pick swap in the 25 draft over to the Rockets, who are probably going to be pretty good. And so being able to make those two moves simultaneously, I'm sure they were contingent on each other. I'm sure that they were, to the Rockets. Well, I mean, I'm not even sure. It's like, that's not even like a hot take. It's just like these two things were simultaneous. It was, once this thing happens, this other thing is going to happen. We had heard that the Nets, the Rockets had floated the idea of just going Suns for picks back, right? We never knew the extent of it, but expected this to be the case.
Sorry, not to jump in, but by the way, it was always, okay, get back your own pick control. But then we were reverse engineering the process and saying, fine, do that, but then find a way to get off of some of these veteran players, because having the pick control and having the rebuild in place is only valuable if you're committed to being a very young team, a very light roster, and not having, a even low risk of a team being too competitive in one of these years going forward. So as impressive and seismic as the trade is with the New York Knicks, this second piece is equally as important, because now they go ahead and have the kind of season that'll be hard to get through. But when you come out of it, you're positioned in the 2025 draft to get that new cornerstone and make decisions around every single young player you have on your roster. So it's insane to think, to read out what they got from New York for Mikal Bridges and then say, it's right there and maybe even kind of slightly behind getting control of your immediate future here, those swaps with Houston and getting the pick control back. Man, I don't know where we want to go to from this, because now we've established how incredible move and how it resets everything for the Brooklyn Nets organization. Are you willing to have a brief conversation just about how Sean Marks, for all the mistakes he has made over the years when it comes to handling superstars, this is kind of his wheelhouse, asset management and pivoting into these type of arenas. He's to have been able to do a very good job in this aspect of being a GM. And it's one of those things where you go, this maybe is why he's survived some of the ups and downs for this franchise.
This is a hard move. It's hard move as a GM to commit to being bad. This is a commitment to being bad for the next couple of years. No other way around it. Like that. This is what this is. This is a move to say the goal here is to lose games. The reason we want to lose games is because it's going to give us an incrementally better chance when the ping pong balls for next year are rolling through the hopper, or the proverbial hopper, that Cooper Flag could be on the other side of it, right? Like that. This is the chance to do it. These sound good in theory, and sitting through an 82 game season where the team is bad is a totally different venture. Now, the difference between being bad like they were this year, where it was bad for no reason except for like bad for just being bad, this year is there's a slight light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be play some young guys. There's probably gonna be a lot of different rotations. They're going to try to lose games. I don't know. There's no other way to put it. Jordy Fernandez is tasked with now coaching a tanking team, right? And that has very strict parameters around it. The parameters are, under no circumstances are you to win games that we should lose. It sucks. It sucks. I wish the NBA wasn't built this way. It'd be better if it provided you, rewards for being good in your draft position. Unfortunately, the way the system is set up now, even with the smoothing of odds around the draft positions, it still behooves you, if you're in this position, to go through this. But what they have done here is set themselves up in such an unbelievable way around the sheer number of picks and very high quality picks they have going forward. They have put themselves in a situation where they will likely have extreme flexibility, the ability to draft very, very high-end talent over the next couple years, the ability to play some young guys in positions to just kind of evaluate and see where they are.
Yep.
And set themselves up for like a 4-year timeline. I know there's fans out there that don't want to do that. It's hard. It's hard. But I do think, to go back to your original thing, Sean Marks, look at this situation, and I have a feeling that he stared at the situation. They obviously talked about it a ton and said, we have a couple different options here. Is there going to be a superstar available for us next year to pair with Bridges and to go with some of these guys? Maybe that's looking increasingly unlikely. Do we have a one-time chance for crosstown, all these Villanova guys, to get in the Knicks front office here and say, hey, go get our boy, and give them whatever they want? Because maybe we're not going to resign OG, and that probably worked out in the Nets' favor here, where they're like, hey, we're not going to get OG back, so go get our boy, and if it costs all the picks, we're not going to need him anyway because we're going to be good for the next couple of years. Combined with getting it back from Houston, one fell swoop, do business with what's left. Sean Marks, I think, pulled off something pretty impressive here, considering the hand that he had already created for himself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes you only look so impressive once you've set yourself up for that success off of some pretty sizable failures, we could certainly say. Reset the timeline here for everybody joining us live over on YouTube. Run down the pick packages here briefly, Doug, and what they recovered back from Houston. And then I do want to ask the question about Mikal Bridges and whether or not we think he had a voice in ultimately his trade to the New York Knicks inside of the office with Sean Marks and Joe Tsai.
Yeah, so if you're with us live on YouTube, much appreciated. Got a ton of people in here. Probably second only to when Durant got traded, and like number of people that we have rolling with us over on YouTube. Sometimes the biggest news is what has everyone crawl out. So much appreciated. Obviously, this is going up on the podcast feed right away as soon as we're done. Also, just to go back and just remind everyone where we are here. Mikal Bridges headed to the Knicks. Still shocked even saying that, by the way, like just saying the words out loud, like that he got traded to the Knicks. In all of these scenarios, I was like, no chance they'll ever do this. Picks come unprotected, 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031. Nets in a rooting situation. I'll get to the other part of it in a second. In a rooting situation, the Nets have now set themselves up to Nets fans are now set up even more. You think you were rooting for the demise of the Knicks before, when it was just because they were in the same city and had like the slightly brighter lights? Well, guess what, folks? Now rooting against them could have a direct effect, because if these guys can bottom out here in the next couple of years, these picks could look unbelievable. So Nets fans didn't need any reason to root against the Knicks, except now we just sweeten the hatred pot a little bit going across town. So they get 4 unprotected picks, and then there's a pick coming back from Milwaukee as well, 2025 picks. So they're going to have 2 picks. Oh, that one's protected for Milwaukee. The second part of this, obviously, that we said before, and arguably as big of a part, is to trade the Suns picks, which were looking like they're going to be pretty good. Back, basically, I'm not going to read through this whole thing. They basically just traded the Suns picks for their pick swap in 25 and their 26 pick back. The reason this is so important, because I see some people already saying, well, it's going to hurt to have those Suns picks. These picks back in the hands of the Nets, who can control their ability to lose games when it matters, is easily more valuable than the Suns picks. That is not that's not even under question. No one, I don't think, should look at those Suns picks and lament the decision, at least, for the Nets to go trade these. the Nets controlling their ability to be bad rather than hoping that the Suns are one day bad, probably will be,
Yep.
but you're still hoping. It is a no-brainer to go this way.
And if you want to look at that in the best possible lens, as you should, remember that the Brooklyn Nets timeline to reset and rebuild this roster relative to those Phoenix picks, it just moved up. Now the short term is going to look bleaker, but you're also going to have the ability to get the highest quality of players in the most immediate draft classes. Even if you love the idea of picks, remember 2025 Phoenix first round pick. Hey, Phoenix is still going to be good in the short term. The Nets now have control of those picks and the ability to add whole premium talent in the draft over the next 2 seasons. That matters once you make that active choice to go into the full rebuild. Do you, and you can come back on that, Doug, too, but I want to get to this Mikal Bridges of it. You said this before we went on live. It does feel reminiscent maybe of the Kevin Durant trade request as well. Do you feel like this is Mikal Bridges maybe going in the front door and saying, my boys over in New York are putting their voices to the GM there. I'm putting my voice here as well. I do want to go, and I want to go to New York, and the pick package is going to be amazing. Let's get this done.
Look, we're reporting this happened within the half hour, so more news is for sure going to come out around this. To credit to the Nets, by the way, an absolute locked box here going into this. There was not even a beginning of a rumbling that the Knicks part was. And I think, and we've also often, and I'll answer the Bridges thing in 1 second, but we've often seen this from Marks, is that you don't know till it happens, really, right?
Yep.
Like they've been a vault over there for a long time, and then it basically happens. The part with Bridges, my guess is, if I just had to say it now, just judging by the situation, I'd be shocked if Bridges demanded the trade, right? But I wouldn't be shocked if there had been talks between these guys to say, like, kind of sort of floating out the appetite from all parties involved, right? He's got too many connections over there for like it not to have been discussed, is my guess, right? So I think like that would feel crazy if like they all just found out. I doubt that's the case. My guess is there was some temperature taking around whether or not the Knicks would even be able to come up with a package that suited their needs. I'd be shocked if Bridges like demanded the trade, but it probably came up as part. My guess is it came up as something like a discussion, right, at some point around like if it could happen. And Mark's probably saying something like it has to be a crazy haul. So I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He for sure was consulted. I'm sure these guys were all in on talks together, back channeling, trying to figure out like who, what was going to work. If everyone was sort of on board for it, Bridges signaling that he'd be okay with it if that was the direction the team went. Like these are things that I'm sure happened. Whether he demanded it, I doubt it, because I think that's something you would like probably hear come out. But that everyone was kind of okay with it, I think, is like probably where it was. I gotta tell you, man, we're 20 minutes into this thing. I'm still in shock. I'm in shock. Like this is a massive NBA ground shifting move. Like the to some degree, the Nets stole the draft here a little bit in terms of just like talking points. I mean, this is leading into the draft. This is one of the biggest like pre-draft trades like ever. Yeah. And the fact that ignore even the fact that it's between the Knicks and the Nets, just in general, it's like such a massive pre-draft trade. Sorry, couldn't get
there.
That
he is. Got the one all the way home. As a reminder for everybody over on YouTube, we do our post games live, interact with everybody with the volume of people that we're incredibly grateful to have in here, and the comments flying through. We'll probably circle back and do a session rehashing a lot of this, taking the temperature of the fan base as well. But you said it, man. It definitely still is okay. This is what we just did. And it shifts dramatically the landscape too. Think about other teams that were interested in Mikal Bridges that were going to maybe pursue him at some point. Houston, whether they said, okay, picks, or maybe we want Mikal. We've heard other teams that were floated out there. All of a sudden, and this is what we talked about with Donovan Mitchell and Nets fans getting excited about the prospect of him. Well, not so fast. He's going to stay in Cleveland. Well, not so fast. Mikal Bridges is gone. Don't worry about superstar pursuits necessarily, because I will just bring something else to the table here as we fast forward to the 2025 season as well, off season as well. One element of this that is certainly to a lower level, expect now, whether it's over the next 24 hours or the next week, whatever it may be, Cameron Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, right? Like there's other names on this roster now that are going to certainly go to whatever level, and however much that may matter, you're going to see, to your point you mentioned earlier, we're in control now. We cannot risk winning games we shouldn't. We cannot have veterans, and they're not going to want to be here anyway. So expect there to be more here, something that we probably won't think too highly about in the short term, but there's going to be more pick packages coming here. There's going to be more movement for this roster before it's all said and done.
And I apologize. I left off something too. Bojan Bogdanovic came back in the trade too. I didn't even mention that.
Honestly, now that's a needle mover here, because you can think about building your core around him now. Now he could be the face of the round. I'm just joking.
Yeah. So
obviously money mattered in the exchange here to make it work for.
Yeah. So it was that right. He was the money piece of it that I just kind of had left off. So, I mean, again, this is going to take probably sort of days to unwind a little bit. And there's a chance that, like you said, too, the Nets aren't even done here. I mean, are there other guys that go? I mean, there's a couple things that actually work in the Nets' favor a little bit with this trade also. One is that the Simmons money doesn't matter as much anymore, right? Like the Ben Simmons contract really sort of no longer hangs over the team like a guillotine. It just kind of doesn't matter. He can just do what he wants to do, what he does this season. Hopefully he plays well, or not. I hope he plays well. If he does not play well, it's not anywhere close to like just the massive money dumpster that it was if you were trying to be good, which, by the way, is almost impossible to be good when your highest paid by far player barely plays. So that part of it is sort of washed away. He will not be traded now. Like he is, I feel pretty solid about that. I think do
you worry, just real quick on that, do you worry at all at whatever lowest level, since we brought up his name, do you worry at all that healthy Ben Simmons could be a detriment to the controlling of your own destiny in the short term? He does represent, at least on paper, a very talented player that can move the needle.
Well, okay. They could swap his money for another bad contract. I just don't know why you would do it now. Like, why would you?
Sure.
I just don't understand. It makes sense on a money perspective to move Simmons's contract, maybe, but it's just going to end. Like, I don't know why you would parlay that into, like, for say Evan Sidery
solely for the risk of impacting wins and loss. That would be the only reason. Like, I would lump him in to different degrees, like you think about Cameron Johnson, like you think about Dorian Finney-Smith, like you would think about a Ben Simmons. If there's a player on the roster that could potentially have a different goal for his season, right? Ben Simmons wants to prove he's still healthy, that he can still play NBA basketball. Cameron Johnson wants to prove that he's a great 3-point, 3-and-D type player that can be an improvement for a roster around the league. Those are motivations that you do not want to have a direct impact on the next 2 years of the draft class now that you have those pick controls back.
Yeah, agreed. But I guess my point is, though, no, I agree with you, but I don't think Ben Simmons impacts their winning.
The risk is low.
So I just don't think that frankly, it might help. It might help them not win.
There's a world.
Like I'm not trying to like drag this guy into the mud here, because like the trade's not about him, but his name is going to be brought up now because it's like, well, what do they do with him? I don't think what would you bring back? Like Zach LaVine's contract that would kind of undo what you were trying to do, unless I take this back actually a little bit. If there was some other contract out there, because you knew you were going to be bad. The Nets know they're going to be bad here for the next couple of years. So if the Bulls were like, hey, a first round pick and LaVine's contract for the Simmons, now we're talking about it, because, if they're going to get, if Simmons' contract brings back a distressed asset plus picks or something like that, then that could be the business that let's get into. So actually take that back a little bit on the Simmons thing. We might see that be the case, because again, taking back that money, you got to spend it anyway. And if it's like in the form of someone else, like getting off Bradley Beal's contract, getting off Zach LaVine's contract in some way, shape, or form, where they can add something to the pot to get off of those picks, or that off of those contracts, then I take it back. We could see the Simmons contract move, which would be another major piece. So I got to walk back my previous statement.
That's what I mean. I think there has to be something shifts there, right? Something changes now with the direction of this team, what their goal is going to be in the short term, and because the Simmons contract no longer represents the same relief of financial weight going into next off season and wanting to pursue a star, wanting to money elsewhere. Another aspect here as we go live, Mikal Bridges traded to the New York Knicks across town, massive pick haul, and also multiple picks gained in control back from the Houston Rockets for Phoenix pick. Big, obviously, franchise shifting decision by Joe Tsai and by Sean Marks. Nicholas Claxton. This is another interesting now talking point here. We've talked about how Nicholas Claxton represents a certain type of value, a certain type of team. Do you think that this, in my opinion, I think it's fine to now still bring him back, fine to treat him apart as that young core in the future. I don't think he directly impacts wins and losses over the next couple of seasons. However, this would also be the opportunity to say, take the best deal out there for you. We actually don't want to spend any money on anybody right now, even including a young talent that we drafted and we developed.
Yeah, it would feel like that he'd be gone. Like that he would try to find a market out there for him, or if the money was just low enough and they felt like they could re-sign him for a reasonable deal. There's no reason to overpay now, right? Unless
that's the other part too. No, you don't have to compete with the market here. Big contract gets offered, we can walk away. It doesn't really matter to our immediacy now for the Nets.
And the Simmons contract helps them get to salary floors and stuff. So it's not even like they need to get out there sort of guns blazing. Claxton, you're signing, look, a free agent now is signing themselves up for either a place to reclaim some of their value and get back out there and like get traded to another team or sign another contract, or be a young player that is looking for a chance to sort of play and kind of shine a little bit. Like these are the Nets. This is the Nets situation. They're looking to, not too dissimilar than what we saw in Washington this year, right? Like I'm not going to compare them to the Pistons because the Pistons were trying to win, not at the end, but like the Pistons were kind of trying this year. It's like made their situation a little sadder. Not dissimilar to what we saw in Washington, maybe not too dissimilar that we saw in Portland this year, where it's just kind of a roster that's by the end of it, it's the Chris Murrays of the world are running 45 minutes. Like these could be the situations where the Nets are kind of getting themselves into. Duath Riop is playing massive minutes for for these guys, and Jeremy Grant's sitting games out because like what's the point? Like these are the kind of situations the Nets are going to be in over the next couple of years. Is Claxton want to sign a long-term contract to be around for a team that he knows for 100% sure will be bad? I'm not sure. It probably kills his market a little bit, honestly, because no one's going to be. I doubt the Nets are going to want to compete contract-wise. But I'd be actually shocked at this point if these were the last moves. I mean, they're in a place now where, and you don't even need to get full value probably in everything now. Right? Like you don't need to probably get full value on Dorian Finney-Smith. I actually don't think they'll trade Day'Ron Sharpe now. Right? Like Day'Ron Sharpe, just the guy that can come back in and play. I think that these are, we'll see what happens with Dennis Schroeder and saying, hey, this isn't the situation that I want. Do I want to be on a really bad team? This is Cam Thomas. We'll talk about. I don't think we'll even spend much time on him now, but what do we see with Cam? We're going to see 40 shots a game from Cam Thomas. We might. I'm not really sure. We're in uncharted waters here. Where it comes to the Nets. This is what happens when you pull off, for the second time in 2 years, the Nets have pulled off a organizational shifting swap that is almost a little tough to sort of wrap your mind around in the short term as like news keeps coming in.
The Nets are nothing if not entertaining when it comes to these aspects of the franchise. One thing I just want to circle back to on, and we're going to talk about all this stuff, not ad nauseum, in a great way ad nauseum in the coming weeks. The Ben Simmons situation, just when you bring up the Chicago Bulls, I'll throw out the name like Lonzo Ball, injured player, final year, 21-ish million. Like that's the kind of thing that I would look at with a Ben Simmons contract now, as opposed to even a Zach LaVine, just because of the multiple years on it. Something that we can digest as we continue to move forward. I find it really interesting as we just reset the table here once again. Big, massive trade. Bridges, New York Knicks, massive picks control back for the Brooklyn Nets. And a friendly reminder, if you're watching us over on YouTube, thank you so much. Do us a solid. Subscribe to the channel, because guess what? We do it 5 days a week. Go get us on your podcast feed, because we're there 5 days a week. Excuse if you're watching on YouTube, some glitchy videos from yours truly, not in the comfort of my own usual studio. Do you feel like, from a developmental standpoint, if we just want to maybe dovetail the last piece of this, you mentioned Noah Clowney. I think what's for me, if I'm already thinking forward to this season, well, developmentally, hey, get out there. Let's work on the game, right? Day'Ron Sharpe, let's work on all the facets that we think you should expand on. Noah Clowney, max minutes for you in your second year, young man. You're going to really take big steps forward. Maybe it is Cam Thomas, 40 shots a game. Let's develop your entire bag, and we don't have to worry about the repercussions of mistakes over the course of the season, something that has plagued this team. Going back to the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving iteration, where's Cam Thomas? Why isn't he playing? Even this past season, why isn't Noah Kalani already up from the G League? Well, we're trying to compete. We want to make the playoffs. Now that gets off the table, and you can get back to the core construct of talent, young talent acquisition, and young talent development. And we've seen that be a success for Sean Marks.
Yeah, this is we're, it's going to be a delicate balance where it's, you don't want to develop bad habits over a few years because you want to develop players, and you want to make sure that, again, you're not winning games, but you're kind of developing guys in the right way. These are tricky balances. This is why sometimes teams stay bad for a long time. Like, sometimes it's because it's hard to sort of balance the, how do we get our guys better while also telling them that we're not winning, right? That's a hard thing to pull off. Right? It's, sometimes you get OKC that does it and kind of, turns it around in 3 years. And sometimes you get Charlotte, who sucked forever, it seems like. And so it's going to be a weird spot to probably be in. We're going to probably be at times of this season where we're going to be talking about our in frustration. But remember, this move, Mikal Bridges plus the Suns picks back for their own picks. These two moves were done in conjunction to set the Nets up for a full rebuild that will probably take years, 5 years. I like the fruits of the labor of this are going to take a long time. Like, this is not your short term. Let's see where we are in 2 years. This is full tank.
It won't
this
take
year.
me long to get excited, though, Doug. It won't take me long. Next year's draft class, watch out. Yours truly is going to be hyping up what they can accomplish at the top of the draft board.
Yeah, of course. Like, we're going to be, it'll be different, right? But this is the kind of thing that takes 2, 3, 4 years to sort of realize. It's see where we are in 2025 as we do massive draft coverage basically all year. I mean, who's going to watch more Cooper Flag than us this year? Like, and all the other guys that are going to be that are setting up to be in this
I'm going to know
draft.
his eating habits. I'm going to know where he likes to take his naps in the middle of the day. We will know these guys.
And there's other guys in this draft too. It's not just him. I mean, he's the the prize here. But there's other guys too. It's going to be, what other contracts can they take on? It's going to be what other assets can they accumulate? What young guys can they kind of hit on and see who they can develop alongside with this stuff? This is going to be a multi-year process that, the Nets are going to lose a lot of games over the next 3 years for sure. There's no way around it. By the way, folks, unfortunately, we kind of want it to be that way. We want to get those draft odds into a place where they can draft high. Yeah, we want to see them play hard. Jordy Fernandez has got a tough job here. But when we talk about full tear it down to the studs and build it back from the ground up, like, this is it. Like, this is, you don't see moves like this a lot. The Nets just did something that is not easy for GMs to do. Really, you have to be pretty secure in your job to do it, because it is signing up for 12 and 70 seasons. It's signing up for 20 and 62s. Like these tough situations. A GM like Sean Marks has to be, with the backing of ownership, has to look and say, do you know what you're prepared for? Tickets are going to not sell every night. Wait till the end of the year. It's going to be easy to get in games, right? You're not going to have these massive draws. The crowds might not be as into it. It's tough. Like, these are tough, but looking at the situation they were in, looking at this with Bridges, looking at sort of the rest of the landscape, looking what they could get back, do it one time, hold the Knicks kind of a little bit hostage because all of his friends are on that team. You might have just only had one chance to pull off something like this.
Yeah, and I think for whatever we believe at the time of the Kevin Durant trade, when there were floated rumors of pick packages for Mikal Bridges, right, pass-through opportunities, okay, a season and a half, wasted time, you can say, right? The rebuild could have started sooner, but where you give credit to the front office, to Joe Tsai, to Sean Marks, is saying, okay, maybe we should have done it sooner, but the only thing worse than acknowledging that you should have done something sooner and still not going ahead and doing it, right, out of some obligation to decisions that you've made. And I will say, you said it, I don't know another GM in any sport that has gone through now this many iterations of a franchise without having any real high-level success and is still walking in the door going, I feel good. I feel good about my position in the organization. I feel good about being at the helm of this rebuild for the Brooklyn Nets. So it's become fascinating. I wonder what type of pressure, if any, and it probably just comes down to player development, how these draft classes come in, who the Brooklyn Nets end up having on the court of the next 2 years. There will be a slow build of expectations of, okay, pick control, okay, number 1 overall pick. It was flag, it was player X, Z, whoever it may be. As they develop, the expectations will slowly start to rebuild themselves. When that comes 2-3 years from now, it still will come. Well, the fan base will look and say, well, now we've got a ton of young, talented players, all under the age of 22, 23, 24. Why aren't we making the leap that Oklahoma City did, right? Oklahoma City, all of a sudden, turn around, blink of an eye, they're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So there will be comparisons that get made here. I think there should be patience, but don't expect it to last long if you're a fan base that feels like you have been dragged over the coals time and time again by the Brooklyn Nets organization.
Yeah. So, and just I'm just actually just real quick. I'm just reading this last Woes tweet just to make sure that I'm fully caught up on this pick situation. Because I want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So they for sure have their 2025 back, and they have their 2026 first back also, right? Yeah, they control their own picks as they go into full rebuilds, right? So the Nets are in fully control of all their picks. I just need to make sure that was like fully stated out correctly. There's been just massive amount of information going around about like these picks and these trades, and sometimes it's a little hard to synthesize it all in the moment. But the idea here is that the Nets control everything from now on, right? There's no more swaps, there's no more picks going out. I think I'm pretty sure I'm reading this correctly. Because Houston gave up the swap and they got the pick back, and that was but the Nets no longer have any of those Suns picks. So just to rewind on that too, not rooting for Phoenix's demise unless you just don't like Durant and company, right? No other reason to root for the Suns to be bad. It's all focus all of that pick hatred right over to the Knicks. Just make sure turn the pivot, turn the tank turret. And make sure that you just may have it focused in the right place. Full control of their picks. And like I said, like next year too, the 2025 draft, obviously there's Cooper Flagg, there's Ace Bailey, there's Dylan Harper. Like there's other high-end draft picks. It's the Cooper Flagg draft for sure. But it's not it's not just him. So this is something we'll talk about as we go on. But again, the Nets are
friendly reminder that what unfolds here, and if the lottery comes to pass and the Brooklyn Nets are picking 3rd, not 1st, or 4th, not 1st, because of how that draft class is and the talent that's projected to be coming into the league, that can still be the massive win for the Brooklyn Nets. It doesn't have to be, you were saying. It's not flag or bust here. It's high top-end prospect talent in draft classes that really matter. It's why maybe it wasn't so critical to talk about the 2024 pick with Houston and what that looked like for the Brooklyn Nets. This is thinking forward and making sure that you set yourself up for the deepest draft class in recent memory that can get you those core pieces you need to be good 2 and 3 years down from the line.
And questions around whether or not Mikal Bridges tanked his value this year with the season he had, I guess that question is answered. That question has been answered. Someone's value, as with anything, stocks, your house, a loaf of bread, the value of something is whatever someone else will pay for it. And when someone comes in and gives essentially 5 first-round picks to get that guy back, whether he was best friends with the guys or not, that becomes the value. So the question around whether or not Mikal Bridges, his value dropped considerably or whatever, that is questions answered. Like the Nets got a borderline generational pick haul here from the team across town. Again, there's other pieces in place that help them. They'll clearly help push that, going back and showering with all those college guys, helps a little bit, being the little, as Adam Levitan over there says, the shower narrative helps a lot, to make sure that everyone's already been in the same locker room together. But in general, like the worry about what his value was to the rest of the league, I think that part is pretty much answered based on, again, what another team was willing to pay for him.
We're not going to have time to really go into comments here, but I will just put up this one because I do think it encapsulates a lot of what we've discussed so far today. I think that pretty much nailed it. BTS Dan Studio, just a massive, and for some reason, I know that it's usually with more inflection, but I do get a little bit of Owen Wilson, wow, kind of vibes off of that. It really is. I can't imagine whether you believed in Sean Marks or not, whether you believe that they should have pursued a superstar or not, whether you think that this is going to lead to ultimate success for this team. It does feel like across the landscape, fan bases, organizations, anyone covering the league, completely shocked and surprised by this being the move that ends up getting made. I'll be fascinated too, as we said, finding out some of the mechanics of this and how it came to pass, because we always get that, right? Whether it's next week, 2 months, 6 months from now, you'll find out how this unfolded. And I'll be really fascinated to hear what other teams were making the calls as well. Like what other discussions were happening that pushed the Knicks to the place of saying pretty much what feels like blank check to get Mikal Bridges over to the New York Knicks.
Let me one more time roll through this, because this guy got posted in the Nets group chat that we're in with a bunch of guys over there, and much appreciated, because sometimes these are some of the best. It's an invaluable place for info, because this group chat we're in with a bunch of other Nets Twitter guys is like, I mean, these guys are absolutely on it. But this was just posted. This is a very good summary here of what happened exactly here for the Nets again. The Knicks got Mikal Bridges in the 2026 Brooklyn pick, but more importantly, here's what Brooklyn's going to get. Brooklyn gets Bojan Bogdanovic. That's the money. That's the money match. A 2025 Knicks first round unprotected. So they're going to have the Knicks first round 25 pick. They're going to have a Milwaukee. So here's another team we're rooting for to be pretty bad next year. A 2025 Milwaukee pick, protected 1 to 4. That's okay. So now they're looking at, and then they're going to get their 25 swap back with Houston. So as long as Milwaukee doesn't land 1 to 4 next year, the Nets are going to have 3 picks in the 2025 draft. I mean, they're going to load up on 2025 talent right out of the gate. So 3 picks in the 25 draft. They get back their 2026 first rounder from Houston. So they're going to have a pick there. They're going to have a Knicks second round pick that year as well. They also had their own pick. I think they had a Dallas pick that year too. 2027 Knicks first round unprotected. 2028 Knicks first round pick swap unprotected. This is very akin to the Harden trade with Houston. 2029 Knicks first round unprotected. 2031 first round unprotected. I mean, we'll be in the old age home by then, but it's all right. We'll set our kids up just like retirement. We set our kids up for retirement, and make sure everyone's getting off into old age. But that is an unbelievable situation that the Nets gave up. They gave up Mikal Bridges and 2 Phoenix picks and got back. They own the Knicks draft for the next half a decade plus, and they own their own ability to sort of control where they're going to be in the draft. I mean, that's as good as you can do.
And I'll just say too, again, when you talk about 3 first round picks in 2025, now options to condense those picks, make sure you get the guy that you're after or get 2 guys that you're after. But in terms of timeline, yes, it's going to be in the short term. But when you have a deep draft class like that, and you maybe make 3 picks potentially, that has a very quick core impact just in terms of who are the players we have, the skill sets, the complementary team that we want to build out. Because remember, we talked about how the problems with ultimately trading Kevin Durant, with letting go of James Harden to Philly, with Kyrie Irving, you took back whatever you could get. And it was never looking like a complementary basketball team. This will now be the version of the Brooklyn Nets where they go in, identify the talent they want, identify the pieces that fit well together, and build the right core that hopefully develops over time. And you can look over to OKC and remember that not every pick is a hit, but when you have enough picks, that's how you end up getting your team to the place that you want it to go, because you can keep firing those shots. So it's really important that in the short term, next season, 3 first round picks, obviously Milwaukee anticipated on being that high 1 through 4, as you mentioned. They're going to be able to bring in some very talented pieces very quickly that should get the fan base reignited and excited.
The one pick that I don't see coming back here is the 27 pick swap with Houston. That's the only one that I'm just not sure came back. Which I just want to.
So, to clarify, what Phoenix picks went for which Houston, Brooklyn Nets control picks back, right?
That's just the one that the 225 is back in their hands, full stop.
Yep.
Right. 26 is back in their hands, full stop. The one that I'm just not sure about is that the Houston has a 27 pick swap, and that's actually the one that I didn't see the Nets getting back. So I will double check on that. We'll know more tomorrow. And again, this is like you need the spreadsheet out and open to figure all this out. I think we're going to get out of here pretty soon here too. It's always hard. We have so many people in here on YouTube. I mean, one of our biggest YouTube lives ever. Clearly, it warrants it. I mean, this is massive, massive landscape shifting news for the Brooklyn Nets. And no other way around it. If you're waiting for big news before draft night, it doesn't get any bigger than the Nets trading Mikal Bridges and reshaping what their future is going to look like for the next few years. There's tons of ways to dissect this. We only briefly, we're able to go through a few of them. I'd encourage you, if you jumped in later, and I know a lot of people did because we saw these numbers really fluctuating over the time, go back and listen from the beginning. We tried to break it down across just about every relevant guy on the roster, what this means for them. We talked about the Bridges piece. We talked about the picks. We talked about the swaps. We talked about what it means for Ben Simmons. We talked about what it can mean for Nick Claxton. We talked about what it can mean for Cam Johnson and Cam Thomas as well. Briefly, but like we try to touch on basically every relevant guy going forward. In the coming days, we're going to go probably guy by guy here and talk about what this means for them. What it means for the Ben Simmons contract going to the season and what different trades could look like. What it means for Cam Thomas, who really sits on a very interesting piece of his timeline here, as being a guy who could really take every single shot the Nets have this season. And every other guy in between. So there's so much to talk about going forward for a team that felt like there was not a lot to talk about over the last 2 months, I would say. Adam and I have now been handed an absolute treasure trove of content probably here for the rest of the summer and beyond.
No, absolutely. I don't know why I was going to say love, but I love the dedication from the Brooklyn Nets and the NBA at large for providing us with another narrative to now build ourselves around and go forward. Doug said it all. We'll continue to cover this, continue to break it down as we move forward. This roster is going to look different, and the way we think about these players is going to look different now, because the narrative is completely shifted to what the goal is for this organization. Please, Doug's going to reiterate it, but follow us on YouTube. Follow us on the podcast feed. Follow us on Twitter at Doug Norrie, at Adam Armbrecht. We are dedicated 5 days a week in the best, worst, and every time in between. So we really appreciate everyone that shows up to these when we go live, in season, post games. It means a lot. We've gotten tremendous support from the Nets fan base, including around some of the dog days over the last 6 months, over the last year and a half for this team. So we really, really appreciate it. I want to make sure we drive that home.
Yeah, and listen, I can already see from the numbers that a lot of you in YouTube already just hit subscribe because I saw this number jump. But if you're still in YouTube right now and you're still rocking the chat and you're just over here, just do us a favor. It takes 1 second. Go click subscribe to Locked On Nets over on YouTube. You'll know when we're going live. We go live all season long after every game. Yeah. If you're new to us, we go basically after every single game, we go live talking about the game. 5 days a week, we're doing this podcast. Really no other Nets content people out there are doing this much as us. And so just to toot our own horns here, if you're looking for like daily Nets coverage, like this is it. Like this is in video form. This is where you're getting it. So tons to talk about here in the coming weeks. Nets still do not have a draft pick for tomorrow, so no worries there. Take the night off, everybody. And at least right now, they don't have a draft pick as of right now. By the way, as of 8:15, as of 8:15 p.m. tonight. Again, to reiterate, Adam and I did a podcast that said, what's going to happen for the Nets? And we said, quote, nothing. And I went upstairs, put on an Office rerun, and here we back are with 700 plus people on YouTube live because the Nets just traded Mikal Bridges and totally reshaped their franchise. Subscribe to Locked On Nets, wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit me, baby.
Life has played some funny tricks on me and taken me on a wild ride. How did I ever get into this wonderful mess that is my life? Why, that is Bo Derek.
One of the all-time and best-looking poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
You are Locked On Nets,